Hi Math 8 students, today we're going to take a look at some more volume problems. Given the volume and height of each of the following cylinders, find the radius and diameter. Alright, so opposite of how we've been seeing it, we've been calculating the volume all along. Now we have to find the radius and the diameter given the volume. So we take the formula and we plug in our givens. We know the volume is 144 pi. And we know the height is 4. So we leave pi r squared and replace the h with 4. So now everything on the right-hand side is being multiplied together, and we know the opposite of multiplying is dividing. So we're going to divide both sides by pi and 4 to isolate the r squared because we're hoping to find the radius. When I do that, the pi and the 4 cancel out on the right, pi cancels out on the left. We get r squared equals 144 divided by 4. 4 goes into 14 3 times with 2 left over, and 4 goes into 24 6 times. So r squared equals 36. So now we have to find what's called the square root of 36. So if you square something, its opposite is finding the square root. We know squaring means multiplying a number by itself twice. So think about that. What number multiplied by itself gives us 36? That's the same as taking the square root of 36. And hopefully the number you're thinking of is 6, because 6 times 6 is 36. So the radius is 6 feet, double that, and the diameter is 12 feet. Okay, not too hard. Let's try another. A cylinder has a volume of 200 pi cubic inches and a height of 2 inches. Determine its diameter. So same idea here. We're going to substitute in 200 pi for the volume, and that equals pi times r squared times a height of 2 inches. So again, we are going to divide by 2 pi, and that makes us cancel out the 2 and the pi on the opposite side, and leaves us with r squared equals 200 divided by 2, which is 100. And again, we're going to find the square root of 100. So you think of, well, what number squared or what number times itself gives us 100? And hopefully you're thinking of the number 10. So the radius is 10, therefore the diameter doubles the 10, which is 20 inches. Again, not so hard. Let's try another example. Number 5. So given the volume and height of each of the following cones now, we're going to find the radius and the diameter. So we noticed the volume formula for a cone. We're going to plug in all the givens like we did before. So we have 75 pi equals 1/3 pi r squared times 9, which is the height. Now this has an added layer because of the 1/3, so I'm going to try to simplify a little bit. So 75 pi equals 1/3 of 9, which is 3 pi r squared. Then we can divide by 3 pi to make it easier. That gives us the r squared by itself. The pi's cancel out, and 75 divided by 3 is 25. Then last, we take the square root. We think about what number times itself makes 25. And hopefully you're realizing it's 5 because 5 times 5, or 5 squared, is 25. So the radius is 5 centimeters, and the height is double that, 10 centimeters. All right, let's try another one. So now a cone has a volume of 1,080 pi cubic centimeters and a height of 10 centimeters. Find its diameter. So using that same process, we're going to plug in the givens. So 1080 pi equals 1/3 pi r squared times 10, because we're dealing with a cone here. So now we can't do 1/3 of 10 as easily as we could do 1/3 of 9 in the last problem, but we can still simplify it. So we have 1080 pi equals 10/3 pi r squared. Then I want to get rid of the pi, so I'm going to multiply, or divide rather, each side by pi. So I get 1080 equals 10/3 of r squared. Now I need to get rid of that 10/3, and in order to get rid of a fraction, I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal. And that isolates my r squared. And remember my trick, when we're multiplying by a fraction, we divide by the denominator and multiply by the numerator. So that's 1080 divided by 10 times 3, which is 324. So our r squared is 324, and I'm sure not all of you know the square root of 324 like we've known the square root of all the other numbers. So we're going to use our calculator and press the square root symbol, which is this one right here. Square root, and we get 18. So r is 18, which makes the diameter double that, 36 centimeters. All right, so hopefully this is making some sense, because we're going to move on to a sphere. Okay, so now, given the volume of each of the following spheres, find the radius and diameter. So volume of a sphere is given there, that's 4/3 pi r cubed, and we're given one sphere's volume total here. So we plug that in for V, 288 pi equals 4/3 pi r cubed. So we don't have height here, but we have r cubed and we have 4/3. So let's start by getting rid of the pi. So we divide by pi and divide by pi. So 288 equals 4/3 r cubed. Then we want to get rid of the 4/3, so we're going to multiply by the reciprocal, which is 3/4. That's going to isolate the r cubed. And we'll do 288 divided by 4 times 3 gives us 216. So now we've got to do the cube root of 216 instead of the square root. So when we do the cube root, we note it this way with a little 3 there. And we get r equals, using our calculator. This is tricky, so make sure you're following what I do here. We're going to do 216, then this x radical y button, 3 equals, and we get 6. And we can check it. If we do 6 times 6 times 6, we get 216, or just 6 cubed, also 216. So r equals 6. And they didn't give us a unit, so I'm just going to leave it as 6. So therefore, diameter equals 12. All right, so it's not too hard, but again, just make sure you're using the idea of solving the equation to do this correctly. Let's try one more example. All right, so number 11, a sphere has a volume of 2,304 pi cubic centimeters. Find its diameter. So again, we have 2,304 pi equals 4/3 pi r cubed. I'm going to get rid of that pi first. The opposite of multiplying is dividing, cancels and cancels. So now we got 2,304 equals 4/3 r cubed. Now we need to get rid of the fraction. And since we're going to be doing something on both sides of the equation, we multiply by the reciprocal. And that isolates our r cubed. Using our calculator, we can do 2,304 divided by 4 times 3, which gives us 1728. Now again, I wouldn't expect you to know the cube root of 1728 off the top of your head, so we can use our calculator. I'm just noting that that's the process there by showing that. So again, we do 1728 x square root y 3 equals 12. And we could check our work. If we do 12 cubed, we get right back to the 1728. So if r is 12, our diameter is double that, 24. And it's centimeters because it says it here in the problem. Okay, so A lot of work here. Take your time, try to follow those as models, and do the ones that we did not do together on your own. Check in with me so I can be sure that you've got them all right, and then you can move on to your exit tickets and homework.